Foro Moda. Vegan Business. Bajo la nueva perspectiva del siglo XXI, ¿es la moda un negocio igual? ¿O ha modificado sus esquemas para acercarse al usuario de hoy? De la moda elitizada del siglo XX a la moda masificada y consciente del XXI. Sostenibilidad, innovación digital, transformación social, ADN de marcas. ABDULLAH Abo Milhim, Libanés, nacionalizado en Reino Unido, máster en Finanzas, Postgrado en Gerencia financiera, experto en empresas de moda, salud y lujo. Más de 10 años vinculado a la educación en negocios de moda, director de Educación de Marangoni Londres. Conduce Carolina Agudelo, colombiana, diseñadora, investigadora, gestora de innovación, coordinadora de diseño en la Universidad de los Andes, Colombia, amante del arte, la moda y la cultura.
Hola. Primero quisiera preguntar si todos tienen su traductor. Es importante que vayan por su traductor porque la conversación va a ser en inglés. Para quienes no se les facilita entender el idioma inglés. Hola. Perfecto. Vamos a iniciar, por favor. So, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here again in Moda, coming back to Cartagena. This is a date that we have been having for 14 years. Every single year, we lost a little bit the idea to be here, present in this physical way 2 years, but we are back and it's wonderful. It's wonderful also to be here in this special place, in this marvelous city center of Cartagena. So thank you to Excel Moda and thank you to Cartagena for receiving us in this special way as every single year. My name is Carolina Gudelo. I'm not the coordinator of design in Los Andes. I'm a simple researcher and professor. So we are here with Abdullah to talk about something very important that is happening in the fashion business. I would like to make a little introduction. In 2015, Lia Delcourt presented the manifesto, anti-fashion manifesto, that she was talking about 10 points that were like to put awareness about what have to change about fashion system and why fashion system was broken 7 years ago. So this 25th century, I think, arrived with a lot of questions and people moving and knowing about the systems because of the digital technologies, the internet connection. We are close to every single point of the earth every day. So we know what is happening in Alaska, we know what is happening. Even in Iran, when they close the internet, we know what is happening. So that opened a door to knowledge and to be aware about what was not okay in the fashion system. Fashion revolution, the disaster of Rana Plaza in Bangladesh, all these things have been like preparing and showing us that the fashion is not as beautiful as we think, that the backstage of fashion is not as clean as we think, and we have many issues there. So we have in a very important moment. The pandemic has accelerated that in a way. So we are going to talk about that and how business, that for me, and we were talking about that with Abdullah, is like business and sustainability related, really related, and we have to let loose some of it a little bit to be able to work with it. So we are going to talk about the title of this talk, that is vegan business. So what do you think, Abdullah, is vegan business?
Hi, everyone. Sustainability is huge, and as you know, there is so much talk about it these days. And there is always this big question, how is this concept going to evolve? Because sometimes you have the view that says, oh, there is so much, I'm so bored with this topic. But then there is also the view that, okay, as we develop as society and the economy and as we move forward, we need to evolve this concept to look at how, what type of shape and what type of effect is going to have. So today, the focus really is about the business aspects of this. I'm not going to talk any manufacturing or how to produce sustainable clothing or any of that stuff, which it has been covered amazingly in this conference. But I want to talk about the stigma that attaches to this topic every time you approach it from a business perspective. So there are aspects around, if you talk too much about it as a company, people will say to you, yeah, you're doing it because it's a marketing tool. And then there are the ones who do it quietly and they don't say anything about it. So people don't know that they're actually doing it, and they get also accused of not saying enough. So there's always problem for the business. And you have also a lot of companies who would like to be more sustainable. They're just not sure how to do it. So they copy other businesses, or they lack the confidence to actually go all the way. And you have the very sophisticated ones where sustainability became some sort of like a driver of the business model of the company. It became like a transformer of the company. And this is like really the very sophisticated aspect. So, and this is what I want to really focus on today, is that when we say vegan business or sustainability or responsibility, we are talking about a 360 approach, not only something you will do in manufacturing or in one aspect of the supply chain. So we're gonna approach the topic from a whole organization perspective that includes what it means to the value of the company, and also relates to the ideology of what the business represents.
I think that's very important to understand. To use food as a metaphor to talk about everything is very fashionable nowadays. Because we are talking about lifestyle, and food is related with lifestyle. So vegan, it's that, it's a lifestyle, and it's something that you compromise with as a lifestyle. You don't eat animals, you don't buy new clothes, you don't use leather, and all this kind of 360 approach to what it means to be responsible with the planet and the life you want to live, the way you want to live. So we are going to talk about businesses in that way.
Absolutely. It's also a choice. And as you said, it's a lifestyle. And it's one of those things where it's going so much fast when it comes to fashion industry at the moment, that sometimes you feel the topic of sustainability is not catching up enough with what's happening with fashion. The world of business is moving so fast. The economy is moving so fast. I mean, now everyone is talking about recession in the next few months, and inflation figures going up, and disruptions of supply chain globally. All of these things, what does it mean for a company that wants to do it, and then suddenly they got worried that maybe if their profits go down, they don't have money to support sustainable activities? So I come from Invitado Marangoni London. We are an Italian fashion school based all over the world. And in the beginning, before we start, I'm just going to give you a small introduction about us, what we do. We are in 12 countries, and 2 weeks ago, we just opened a branch in Dubai. We are in Milan, Firenze, Mumbai, and I come from the London campus. And whether it's Invitado Marangoni or the amazing universities here in Colombia or in South America or everywhere, all universities been really doing a lot of research and trying to approach this topic. So, and I think it's that diversity of research that comes from all institutions. In London, for us, it's kind of, we took a little bit of different approach, which represented what I'm gonna talk about today. We approach the topic of sustainability, not only from manufacturing, but also from business models, from supply chains, from technology, from finance, which is kind of like the whole 360 degrees that we're going to talk about. Just a short video in the beginning about the school, and then we can kick off. Yeah.
I'm studying the Master of Fashion Design.
Everything is fashion.
Io studio interior design.
Io ho scelto interior design.
Enjoy. I love the school.
My name is Chris, I'm 20 and I'm from Barcelona.
Le stylisme. Je fréquente le cours de stylisme.
Studio fashion design.
The meaning of fashion.
I want to be a fashion designer.
Grande voglio fare progettista.
I don't care, go on and tear me apart. I don't care if you do.
So this is us. When we say vegan business, we're not only talking business, because like every aspect of business as a subject, there is always a connection with different things. So we're going to approach the topic starting in the beginning, talking about where are we in terms of future of retail. As the fashion industry is going so fast, future of retail is getting shaped with various different things. So we have consumers, which have been really evolving at a very, very interesting pace. In the beginning, everyone was talking about millennials and their effect on the fashion industry. Now the fashion industry is missing the millennials because they used to be big spenders. But then suddenly Gen Z came in and they caused the biggest disruption for retail that we've seen in the fashion industry. It's just very difficult to operate marketing and branding with a generation that has full access to technology, that knows a lot of things, that research everything, that is very entrepreneurial, where traditional marketing does not really work. So we have consumer shift. I don't like to use the word trends. I think, you know, the term trends have changed a lot now. I think people are creating their own trends. They are personalizing their own trends. It's not about following what's really there. But, you know, let's call it a shift. So consumers are shifting. We have also a big shift in terms of technology. So that technology really is affecting the term business. Acceleration after COVID, as mentioned a few times in the last few days here, and that really led into a huge opportunity available for the fashion industry, which is, what can you do with all this? There is so much tension when it comes to the topic of sustainability and technology. You have the, you know, one group that says, oh, technology is bad because it produces a lot of fast fashion for us, which in some sense is true. But then sustainability and technology takes another perspective, where technology is helping companies become more sustainable through the implementation of things like AI, blockchain, analytics, data, which I will be touching on today. So there is that discussion that has two types. And also the third one is the society. You're witnessing how the world has changed a lot. 2008 financial crisis was some sort of globalization exploding in our faces. It was years and years of opening up the markets, relaxation of deregulations of the market, which made it easier for goods and services to go into different places, which also accelerated a huge production of cheap goods and also non-sustainable products, because capital was accessible, markets were accessible. You could do anything with globalization. 2008, the whole financial system collapsed because the world was so much correlated. And then that led to a huge shift later on, which we are experiencing at the moment. We had kind of like a new type of society in some places, where there is a view of being anti-global, anti-organization, anti-EU, that's like Brexit, anti-capitalism and so many other things. And then suddenly Donald Trump wins the election in the US, spread out of kind of populist regimes across Europe and different places, Italy last week. So the world is really changing, and the question is, what does it mean for fashion brands? We've seen, for example, brands like Under Armour in the US endorsing Donald Trump in his election, Marks and Spencer in the UK endorsing Brexit, saying is the best thing for the country. And then suddenly these taboos, where companies could not really speak politics before, started to change, and businesses are not afraid to take a political stand anymore. And that really changed a lot of things for us and is going to continue. So that society now is moving a lot. And then the last one is business models, which is really a big topic. And this is when we say business model, we are talking about value. The thing is, if a company suddenly wants to start doing strategies that are pretty much considered to be sustainable, and their business model is not allowing them to do it, it's not going to work. So when we say vegan business, we're talking also about a business where the business model has so much autonomy and flexibility to allow you to do that.
So as we see, there is a whole connection. Everything is completely connected in this idea of the consumer, the technology, the business, and the society. We cannot work with these things separate. We cannot concentrate in consumers. We cannot only concentrate on technology. We cannot only concentrate on manufacturing, that we are not going to talk about that, but it's a big, big issue. I mean, yesterday we were talking about a little bit that what's the meaning of the business when you are producing stuff and clothes that you don't even selling, you are throwing away new. So what's the idea there, and what's the imbalance, and what is the real business behind the industry that is not selling anymore? So what we are facing, and we have to begin to think about it. So it's very important to have all these things connected. And if we are in the fashion business, in the fashion system that I like to think and call ecosystem, because everything is related, nowadays, if something fails, everything is going to break down and being unbalanced.
Absolutely. And adding to that, have you noticed when every time the media talks about the fashion industry and sustainability, they say the fashion business model is broken. They use the fashion business model. But we in the fashion industry, we don't give so much attention to the term of business model. And that's why today I want to talk more about the business model, because I think people are missing the point. There is a blame for our media in the fashion industry. We tend to do a lot of things that are quite similar, and we forget about lots of big things. So when others tell us that our business model is broken, so we want to talk about it today. And then we say, how can we change that to something that is actually not broken?
Perfect. So let's to talk about business model.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sorry. One of the changes that we're facing in the world right now, which is having massive impact on sustainability and massive impact on whether people, customers, or brands wants to approach it or not, is that thing about global identity. So we have two groups of citizens in the world right now. So they are the ones who believe that they have a global identity. So they say, you know, I'm a global citizen. We hear this term all the time. So those people, they will care about things like sustainability, planet. They care about suffering of people in other countries and in other places. They feel their identity is very much global. And then you have the others, which reflects the populist regimes that we've been facing, where basically saying, right, I don't care about all of this, it's all about nationalism. But also there is a small group in this that is doing actually the good thing, saying, right, okay, you know, I come from this small country, we have so many problems, and for me, solving the problems of my country in the beginning is actually quite important. So that feeling of national versus global, local versus global, and then suddenly we started talking about globalization moving to localization, and now we can talk about glocalization, where you're seeing in fashion industry across a lot of countries, there is so much consumption where big things are becoming so local, and we are reverting back to that system. This is how fashion started before it went global. Now we're going in the opposite way, which is meaning a lot of things for businesses, the vegan businesses that want to become vegan or, you know, can I say sustainable, also needed to experience that sort of a trend. E-commerce. Okay. Now, this e-commerce has always been discussed in relation to sustainability. During COVID, the increase in use of e-commerce was around 27%. And that really gave the view that actually we are going to have more and more technology adoption in the future. But then suddenly we started feeling that there is a new shape and a new form of e-commerce at the moment. Let's break it down a little bit. This is a very powerful type of e-commerce where it embeds three things: technology, personalization, and experience. Three things, which are very key, by the way. And why I'm talking about these three? Because when it comes to sustainability, think about personalization, think about experience, and think about technology. And this is where I want to make the link here. So in the beginning, consumers, they used to go to brands and say, we've seen this a lot with the millennials, I want you to give me experience. So companies started implementing VR and AR in the stores and giving them lots of experience. Later on, things really became difficult for businesses. There's a new type of consumer. Now the new type of consumer is saying to the brands, I want a personalized experience, which is even more difficult. How can you have millions of customers around the world and then give a personalized experience to everyone? And if you start doing it, it becomes mass production, right? But then at the end, you shouldn't be doing mass production, and then suddenly your sales go down, your profits go down. So there is a dilemma. But guess what? There is even a worse type of consumer, which is the third one. They want a personalized experience, and they want to design it themselves. We're seeing a lot of these consumers now. So these consumers go to the brand and say, I want a personalized experience, and I want you to give me a platform, a software, a website, a metaverse. That's why we have the metaverse now, where I can go there and I can tell you what I like, and I can design my own avatar, and I play Roblox. And then companies looking at all of this saying, okay, let's follow this consumer to the metaverse. And suddenly we have marketplaces there. Right. All of this is a whole different new type of e-commerce, which is an e-commerce designed by the consumer through a technology offered by the brand.
That's something really difficult.
Very difficult.
In a way, because it's about being, we are entitled to have, entitled to be, and entitled to express. And for me, that's a little bit complicated, that everybody wants, then do your own stuff. Learn how to sew, learn how to personalize your clothes, learn how to do it. But people has been losing that skills as well. I mean, in the 50s, 40s, people used to do clothes at home, in a way. Not even 100 years later, we are not able to do our stuff. So that's something that I want to address a little bit further, because it's becoming really, it's pushing businesses, it's pushing people to have, and just to say, I'm entitled to have this, so I want it, so you have to give it to me. So this is a very important part of the broken system we are talking about.
Absolutely. And the reason, this today is on the slide is because we want to show that when you as a business pay so much attention to try to offer this, you're actually forgetting about the main things. And this is where the system is broken. And this is where, you need to decide as a company, do you really want to go in that direction where you need to satisfy every consumer's need, or you want to do something that is your DNA, your business model, what you represent as a company, and is the value, and is the ethics of it as well. And this, unfortunately, we're going to see more and more versions of evolving of e-commerce, which is one of the reasons why so many brands now are going in the opposite direction. So it's about the balance. You could still do this and offer some sort of, a sustainable product, maybe using e-commerce, we don't know. But we are at the beginning of seeing e-commerce reshaped into that type of model at the moment. Finery is one of the companies, I put that as an example, where you could personalize your digital wardrobe by creating a digital wardrobe of your physical one, and it links to your account, it scans all your receipts, it warns you of buying anything that you have very similar design or a color in your wardrobe, It gets people to buy less. It was bought by Stitch Fix a few years ago, but it's just one of the models that show you how this could actually go in reality. So the business model. Sorry, I'm a little bit slow until I touch into sustainability, but this is important in the beginning. When they say our business model is broken in the fashion industry, so let's start with the very basics. What's a business model? Simply, it's the way a company generates value. Is the business model the same as a strategy? No. They are related. So I want to generate value for a business, which is myself. So I want to see my profits, my revenues go up. I want to generate value for the consumers, offering them a product at a good price, a good quality. And I want to offer value for my shareholders who are the owners of my company. And I want to generate value for the society, for the country. Imagine you are under a pressure to have a business model that really works. Now that business model is not the same for every company. In some companies, this business model is combined with so many things like technology and so on. In some businesses, it's just the same thing for the last 20 years, it did not change. And in some other businesses, the business model is something they are revisiting all the time. Look at fashion brands right now. Every time there is a new CEO, new creative director, you will see the company shifting. 2 days ago, Burberry announced there is a new creative director joining Burberry. Before that, Riccardo Tisci changed completely the business model of Burberry. And before that, Christopher Bailey completely changed the brand. And then look at so many other companies, and Gucci is the same thing. So that business model is pretty much heavily involved in the concept of value. Now, when we say value, sustainability becomes suddenly a big topic because sustainability is about value.
I like to address something that I wrote some week ago, I think, 2 weeks ago. The earth is our only shareholder. Patagonia they decided as a family to give the business to the people. I don't know if we are all related with Patagonia, what's their values and what they're driven. They have a enormous piece of land in Chile that they take care of it because Earth is their only shareholder. So we are talking about value different than profit because we used to mismatch or understand value different. I mean, in the 80s, in the 90s, value was making money. Nowadays, what is value? What is related to?
Absolutely. Value at the moment is a mixture of different things, but at the heart of it is also doing the right thing. And that generation of value that is moving from the monetary aspect into something more ethical. So when we say value now in the context of sustainability, we can probably start talking about responsibility. The term responsibility is what we should be starting to discuss more and more because it's not only environment, it's also so many other things. So we'll be talking a lot about responsibility today as well, because I think people are saying, okay, there's so much about sustainability, what's next? Oh, well, there are thousands of things when you start talking about responsibility. There is equal pay and gender differences and who gets into leadership positions and so on and so on. So for that, the business model is really what you need to have to generate that value. It's just the term value now is taking a non-monetary shape. And Patagonia was just one of those examples. I remember Loro Piana, for example, they did a lot of work in, I think it's in Argentina and also in Peru, around the Vicuña. And then they invested money in the farms because it was killed before, and they sent their children to school and they sponsored these families. But you know, their products are quite expensive, but the population of Vicuña back then increased because it was getting extincted in, yeah.
For sure, and it's a luxury fiber
And it's a luxury.
because of the process that the fiber is processed nowadays. Because vicuñas are free, there are no farms, so they have to take it, bring it, share their hair, and then leave it go. And 2 years later, they're doing the same process. So it's very, very special, and it's very important that also a company that does fabrics for suits for men does this kind of stuff. So this is the the level of consciousness we are talking about, and the level of value, because it's value for the animals, it's value for the lands, it's value
Absolutely.
for the people, and it's value for the things that you're wearing.
And that question of value and business model is important, because if you really want to run a sustainable business, you need to understand how your business model of running that business is going to work. And this is basically the main heart of that topic. So we need to shift into a new business model. You kindly started talking about it earlier when you said, you know, value is taking another shape. We definitely need a new business model. We need a business model, you know, where basically we're not only focusing on profits, but redesigning basically our strategies. We're looking at how do we reshape what we do to become a little bit more sustainable, but also how do we connect with different things such as technology and supply chain and so on. And the issue with sustainability and responsibility in general is sometimes you know what you want to do there, and you might have the money to do it, but you just don't have the system to run it. So you speak to these brands, you're saying they are basically begging you for advice. They are saying, I would love to do it, I just don't know how to do it. Don't know how means I don't have the business model to do it, and I don't have the value chain that runs to do it. So there is a big responsibility for us as academics, as universities, as society, as governments, to actually educate people how do you run a sustainable business. There is so much money given by governments to business and say, okay, we'll give you money, go and do it. It's just they don't know how to do it. Many of them.
And I love to talk about that. It's not one model. There are like thousands of models. So where we are talking about having new narratives and new approaches to the fashion system is that you can just understand where you are standing, what you can do. It could be small or big or whatever, but it's different. You don't have to copy other people's businesses. You have to learn how to build your own. So I think that's important. That's why education, it's so important.
Absolutely. And, you know, adding to what you said is three things. Number one is knowing what your business model is. Number two, knowing how to reflect on it, to revisit it, to see where it's working, where it's not working. And number three is to transform it. So these are the three things that we need to keep as a business. Because if someone asks you and you couldn't answer in 2 minutes what your company is, then you have an issue. You don't understand your business model. And that business model, if we really understand it properly and know how to transform it, is going to help us shifting from an environment concept into a more responsible concept. And this is what we really need, all of us collectively, to start working on. This is a collaboration research between BCG and Alta Gamma in Italy. And I found it fascinating because basically they were saying sustainability is not an action, it's a strategy. But also it's a 360 approach, which includes every other aspect of value that you were discussing earlier. So we need to talk diversity, we need to talk gender, we need to talk so many other things. And for us to do that, we need a whole different type of a shift. Let's transform that business model. What do we need to do the right thing and transform it? Number one, we need to respond to the consumer shifts. A lot of consumers, they are very angry with businesses that are producing fast fashion, and they are angry with the businesses they like because they are not happy with the way they are doing things. And we need to respond to that consumer, not for profit purposes, but you know, these consumers, that view that business understands more the consumer is an old mentality now. Businesses are driving the society. Consumers are driving the shifts that we have in fashion. We need to respond to the shift of technology. There are technologies in AI that are destroying jobs. We know this. International Labour Organization says artificial intelligence will destroy jobs in the short term, but it will create new jobs in the long term. And some aspects of artificial intelligence can be used to do good things. So we need to be a little bit more open-minded and pragmatic, instead of just judging and say technology is bad because they produce fast fashion. Correct, but also it depends how do you use it. And I always say technology is a tool. It can develop into whatever you can imagine in the next 20, 30 years. It doesn't matter, it's still a tool. Use it how you like. You could use it to do the right thing, you could use it to do over mass production. So that digital disruption is really important for us. And also the move from the concept of the country to the concept of the city. This is the message for government. The world has changed. Cities are more important than countries when it comes to customers, to strategies, to everything else. We need to think about not only the capitals, we need to think about other places. So tier 2 cities around the world now are having the biggest growth that we've seen in the last 50 years. Take so many countries as examples. You look at India, for example. It was always about Mumbai and Delhi. Now, the biggest fashion growth that is happening in India is going in places like Pune, Jaipur, also in China. Shenzhen, for example, and tier 3 cities in China is where a lot of luxury brands started producing new things and doing things for the first time in China, starting from these places. The message is really clear. Think about the cities. Every city needs a different sustainability strategy. Every city needs a different marketing strategy and so on. So whether it's a government or whether it's a business, start with the local before you start thinking global. And a lot of businesses, unfortunately, ended up being non-sustainable because they thought their success in business will only happen when they go global. But actually, it's the wrong approach to do.
There is a tool in design when you are working in design, thinking stuff and building strategies. That is we call it the clamp. When you come with an idea from top to bottom, and when you build an idea with the people and the place, bottom up. So when they get together, because you can come with ideas that usually happen when you have these government initiatives, no? Someone sitting in a computer says, oh, we can do this in this little town, and we can work with people, and we are going to save them. And then they arrive with the idea, and they doesn't work because they never ask the people, like, do you want us to come here? Do you want to work with us? And maybe they have solutions and things that works better for the place. So this is something that is very important when you are working, I think, in this idea of globalization, localization, especially when you are doing local initiatives, that be sure that you are working with the ideas that you have, like all around the Europe idea of fashion, and then what fashion means from people in a place. So I think that's something that can help to build this idea of sustainability, working with people.
Absolutely.
Place.
I mean, adding on what you said, which is I completely agree with. We had a massive growth in things like globalization, which changed the world, but also that was accompanied with a massive overproduction as a result. Because when we went global, many businesses became big, and when they became big, they just wanted to enter every market, so they started over mass production. And I think now we need to start reverting all of that, and a lot of businesses starting looking at that aspect now, which is we have so many things to do. I mean, it's my first visit in Colombia, and I can see, there is so much potential here. I mean, the amount of attention given to sustainability, it was so impressive, from the hotel to the restaurants to many other places, and I think it's a good sign. Focus on local concepts, generate that value for your society before you think about going global and playing the same game, which even if you don't intend to be non-sustainable, you might end up being non-sustainable because this is the price of the growth that you will have to pay and what you're going to do. So sustainability is a 360 approach. I saw this picture in a report published by Boston Consulting Group, BCG, where they actually said, listen, sustainability is a 360 approach. You're not talking only environment, you're also talking diversity, inclusion, and this is the business model that we discussed earlier. So I'm trying to make connection here between value business model and having sustainability being a whole ecosystem of things. And I think we need to start thinking that way, because as long as we take it only as one approach or doing one thing to our supply chain, it's going to continue to become tiny and small, which doesn't have much effect on what we want to achieve as a business. And this is the best time to talk about these topics, because what did COVID do to the world? I mean, COVID was the biggest health disruption that we had, disaster, let's say, for many, many years. But then there are things that resulted from COVID, which I have to say, sadly, not everyone is talking about it. The media is not discussing. Examples. So COVID resulted in the biggest woman unemployment in the last 110 years. Are you reading anything in the media about this? Nothing. Why did that happen? So 2008 financial crisis, it hit the financial sector. It was the bankers. 80% of global bankers are women. It's the same thing like, are men, but also the same thing with technology. Only 30% of the global population of people working in technology are actually women. So with COVID, it hit the sectors where there's a huge employment in many countries for the female community. But also, the society shut down. A lot of women had to work from home, and they had to do also homeschooling for their children. They had to compromise their jobs, they had to leave their jobs. And then suddenly we had a massive dropout of the employment of women across different countries. In Japan, in the first year of the financial crisis, of the COVID, in the first year, 600,000 Japanese women dropped out of the working force. Now, when we look at global figures, this widened the gap between male and females at work. It widened the gap in terms of pay, who gets the CEO and leadership position in companies. It reversed a lot of work that has been done. And that's only one example. But also COVID resulted in a lost generation. Who is that lost generation? The millennials. Imagine the millennials I know a lot of you here belong to that generation. Those millennials, they are the only generation that had two massive upsets in their lives in a space of 10 years. They lost their jobs in 2008. It took them around 5 years to recover from it. There was a massive unemployment across different countries. The moment they started putting their life back, COVID hit. They are like the lost generation. So we have so many issues around the world at the moment. And obviously the biggest problem that COVID left us with is supply chain. You're seeing what's going on with supply chain. Global issues across different countries, whether it's energy or gas, pushing inflation figures higher in different countries, forcing governments to raise interest rates, sending the economies in recession in the beginning of next year. All of this is leaving a lot of problems.
I love you are addressing this, because for people related to fashion in Colombia or in some places, usually you don't think about that, because fashion is not about that. So fashion just relates to itself, to the image, to the influencer, to this beautiful thing. But when you are going to work in the fashion ecosystem, whatever you do, it doesn't matter what, if you are going to be a designer, if you are going to be someone that is sewing, the beauty, the logistics, whatever you are going to be working, you have to know about what is going on in the world, because you are not just a creative that is doing beautiful things. You are part of an ecosystem that is shown there in this circle, in this diagram. So it's very important for fashion education to address that, as you have the trends and the drawing and the suing. You have to be talking about economy, about politics, about history, about all the stuff, because this is very important what you are saying. I mean, it's if we have a lost generation, that's a big issue, because it's people that is not happy, that is not feeling good, that they are not going to give like openly to the society, because the society has been taken from them. So we have to think about it.
And absolutely, I agree with you. The worst thing is, because now there are issues in the economy, that might result also in so many other issues, which could result also in sustainability being approached in a wrong way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can continue. We have minutes, and then we are going
Okay.
to questions from the public.
Supply chain is a big problem at the moment. So please, the message here is very clear. Let's think about supply chain regardless of where you are in the fashion industry. In education, we basically started teaching supply chain in much detail for fashion styling, fashion design, because at the beginning only fashion business students used to know about it. Now everyone needs to know about it. How this supply chain, which is currently is a big problem post-COVID, becomes sustainable is the key of that issue.
Supply chain is related, and I'm going to say it in Spanish, to la cadena productiva. Toda la manera como está conectado el sistema de producción desde la fibra hasta el final. Y tiene que ver con el diseño y tiene que ver con absolutamente todas las expresiones relacionadas con la industria de la moda. Entonces es supremamente importante. Un diseñador tiene que saber de esto, obligadamente, que es como la forma de educación más famosa. Sorry for the...
No, it's fine. I want to show you this from Bloomberg. I used to work for Bloomberg at some time, but this picture is really telling, because what this picture is showing us, 150 billion is the amount, is the value of total bonds. So bonds are basically like loans, think about it, issued by the financial sector for sustainable related activities by businesses. So a lot of businesses want to move in that direction. The financial sector is responding to it. And it's also very refreshing that COVID has actually led us into so much interest that we want to do the right thing, and then we started approaching finance. So there is a little bit of positive view there. And then people started talking about technology. What does it mean? Blockchain is one of the things, for example, which really came into that to start solving issues. When you say blockchain, people say, oh no, cryptocurrencies, I'm not dealing with that stuff. But then United Nations is using blockchain for their food hunger program and to monitor the movements of money and immigrants across different countries. So United Nations is endorsing.
It allows us to track in real time. That's why technology and the big brother where you are is like to be able to catch where food comes from, how much water was spent. So for some people doesn't know that much about blockchain. So it's something that is that we all have to know about it. So research it and learn about it.
I find this really interesting. I was using my Bloomberg platform, and then I came across this picture and I was like, okay, this is perfect for this presentation. Basically, Bloomberg went to their platform, and what they decided to do, they decided to break down the term responsibility into different titles. So you can see there, for example, environmental, and then they list revenues, etc., etc. And this really reflects what are the things that we really need to start tracking in the society, in the economy, in the world of business, in terms of value. Look how complicated the supply chain is. I'm not going to go through the details, but imagine we are now in a system of supply chain where things are not linear anymore. When we opened the books of supply chain when we were students, they used to say, it goes to the factory, and then from the factory to the consumer, it starts as basic material. The supply chain is so non-linear now. And because it's very non-linear, it becomes very difficult to manage it. And because it's very difficult to manage it, there's a big possibility you ended up doing the wrong thing and being non-sustainable as a result of that. This is McKinsey showing similar thing, how the supply chain needs to be properly redesigned. We moved from that linearity at the top line to non-linearity later on. Non-linearity means you need to change your approaches to production, which is, as you mentioned earlier, is a big issue. But also, it's also forcing us to start thinking, how can I be sustainable in a non-linear supply chain? A lot of businesses, they have a supply chain that is non-linear. They are failing in sustainability because they approach it as a linear supply chain. So this is a big message here. Let's learn more about these things, because supply chain disruptions are with us for the next few years.
Another concept there is circular economy. That's very important for all of us to read about it and understand what is the meaning and how to structure a strategy in a business about the circularity. It's not minimal, and it's very important because it's not only trendy, but it's the way businesses are going to be run, and the supply chains and everything is going to be managed that way.
Sorry, I think the screen is giving up on me.
Okay.
Wants me to stop talking.
We have tenemos problemas con la pantalla, chicos. No sabemos qué pasa.
No?
Que ya.
Yeah, so I know we don't have much time, but I can probably talk about it, which is the last point I wanted to discuss today, is technology. Okay? So technology led us to this broken system because it allowed businesses to go with this complete, mass production and so on. But also technology has a good side of it. So let's be a little bit more open-minded about it. One thing about fashion, which I always discuss with businesses when I go meet them, we collaborate with so many brands. And one of the things that businesses are suffering from is that the supply chain is becoming shorter. Have you thought about it? How short is your supply chain? Try to go back 10 years and see where your supply chain was. And look how short is your supply chain. Short means your point of demand and your point of supply are very close to each other. And to make it worse, the customer comes to you and say, I want experience and I want personalization. How can you do this in a supply chain that is becoming really tightened? I tightened. What do we call it? We say it's a disruption of the supply chain. Now, the answer, how do we manage all of that? Technology could be a solution, but also the moment your supply chain becomes shorter and you start having issues doing sustainable things in a sustainable way, straight away you need to move and change your business model to be a business model that is able to deal with short supply chains, with short buying cycles. My fashion buying students, they are writing research about the same thing now. I'm like, all of you writing the same topic. They were like, what is the role of the fashion buyer in the future? In London, every university almost in London I know is closing their fashion buying departments because the role of the buyer has really changed. Buyers are working there for like 10, 15, 20 years, and suddenly supply chain changes. They find their jobs not relevant anymore. So now we started doing different things. Yeah. Okay. We need a complete reset for the supply chain. And I think, we need to talk more about this.
That's very beautiful because it's full of opportunities. If we have to change our supply chain, we are allowed, and it's wonderful to think about many small businesses related to the supply chain in a different way, in a conscious way, in a local way, connected. So it's beautiful to talk about that, the disruption, and how to build this new narrative and new ideas about the fashion industry.
Absolutely. Everyone is talking about digital fashion now, saying like, when you speak to the people who love digital fashion, they say to you, oh yeah, because digital fashion means you're going to buy clothes in the virtual world, and you're going to buy less clothes in the real world. Really? Yeah. So digital fashion, yes, it could lead to some sustainable factors. But then let's think about it that way. The metaverse is a parallel world. It's not a world that is going to replace the store. And it's not going to replace the real physical garments. And, it's an interesting world to engage with the consumer, to give the consumer the freedom to go to that world, but not necessarily the effect of it. This is a personal opinion. The effect is going to be hugely for sustainability, because you still need to produce something when it comes to sustainability. But for things like, you know, giving people the opportunity to express themselves and so on, there is maybe some sort of like an ethical aspect related to it. Look how complex the global supply chain. New technologies now are allowing businesses to track the movements of their supply chain in real time, which means every participant of the supply chain has the same level of information simultaneously as it moves from the point of supply to the point of demand. You know, containers now are being equipped with Internet of Things and technologies that allow the supply chain to become a little bit more sustainable. And then people started talking about a blockchain, which I would probably need a whole lecture about. But, you know, let me just say, blockchain is one of the biggest innovations we had in the last 100 years. It is related heavily to Bitcoin, but then blockchain moved away from finance into other things such as supply chain and so on and so on. The concept of blockchain, which you hear about it all the time, I'm going to try to introduce it in 1 minute. I know Danilo is angry with me now, but I'm just going to try to. Okay, thank you. With blockchain, let's divide the term into two words, block and a chain. Okay, or let's put it this way, a chain of a block. So this is a network, a technological innovation, where on that network, you have participants. It could be all of us sitting in this class. The participants on that network can share information, can do some transactions together in a very secure environment. Now imagine that network as a supply chain. We are all part of that supply chain. We are doing things together. I know the same information as everyone here, and I received it at the same time like everyone here. And then I cannot do anything illegal or something hidden in the supply chain until each person in the supply chain accepts and approves that transaction. We call it mining. Okay? That blockchain also means you could track and trace and know where the products are coming from. The consumer can scan a QR code, can see the whole process of where it's coming from, but also at the same time, I can know the origin of everything. Yeah? So it's a chain of different blocks, and by the way, a block is a transaction. If you want the government to be part of this, you bring the governments, you put them on that chain. They become part of the participants. Dubai, for example, next year will be the first government in the world running all its central governments from Minister of Finance to Minister of Education on blockchain. Okay, United Nations is doing it to offer food in a much fairer way and also monitor the movements of refugees.
Transparency.
Transparency.
That is the main point about sustainability and about do the right thing and about having responsible businesses. So it's a huge opportunity. I mean, blockchain is here, to stay. Yeah. So we have to learn about it.
This exactly reflects what you just mentioned, which is on that slide. Is that compliance with government regulations, with doing the right thing, but also better management of your shareholders, the flexibility, the traceability to become more sustainable. And the shift really this is going to lead us is the authentication of products. There are lots of, I don't know if you've seen the new platform. The thing about fashion is sometimes we react so slowly to technology. Have you noticed that sometimes technologies, they start in supermarkets first and then they come to fashion later on?
QR code.
Yeah, the QR codes.
It was for supermarkets, for meat.
Absolutely. The VR and actually buying using the VR came from the supermarkets. And one of the early concepts started in Italy. So why? Because fashion usually is a very slow mover when it comes to technology. And when it came to blockchain in the beginning, so LVMH, they were like investing in a small machine that runs on blockchain. If you scan the item, it tells you if it's fake or not. Okay, that was fun and interesting. But then later on, we've seen last year, finally, the fashion industry talking strongly and about supply chain. So we had brands that usually don't collaborate together, sitting together and doing something for the first time in the fashion industry. So 3 big fashion groups, LVMH, Richemont, and Prada. So they sat together and they said, listen, you know, we compete, that's true. We all fight for market share, but we have a big issue. Sustainability, responsibility, you know, things that are really affecting our industry. So how about we start a platform together and we start bringing so many different brands. It was the first time luxury brands collaborating on an issue that really affects the fashion industry. That platform is called Aura. If we can play video, I can show you. Really interesting concept. And what they want to do is they just want to give that message that we have a problem we are all facing. Let's collaboratively try to solve it.
I was going to say that. I love that idea of the switch from being competitive to being collaborators in a collaboration economy.
Absolutely, and this is where the business model becomes a business model driven by partnerships, by collaborations, by people sharing same views, same ideas, putting profits aside, putting revenues aside. You know, it's about doing something for the society, for the fashion system, because they are bored of being accused of having this broken business model.
And
yeah.
It drives me to the anti-fashion manifesto. About the individuality and the idea of the fashion education, like around the idea of the next big star and the fashion star, and alone this star is going to be doing great things, and it's not working anymore because we have been this creative directors crisis. What happened to McQueen and and what is happening right now. Companies changing their design directors every single week.
Yeah.
And it's because we have to begin to talk, to begin to be working all together. And I think that's an opportunity.
Absolutely. We need more collaboration. We need, because we are all love this industry and, you know, we want the best for it. We want the best for our countries. We want the best for our society. And, you know, competition is not really the way forward. We discussed NFTs before and
I think we have to close. Danilo is just saying.
Last 2 slides. No, when it comes to, fine, okay, it doesn't matter. What I wanted to say at the end is, you know, there is a huge responsibility for business leaders, for governments, to start education, investing in projects to educate people rather than just investing to help a company to become sustainable. Okay? Because it's easy to do that. Give a loan for a company and say, take this because it will help you to produce sustainable products. We need education. There is a huge responsibility for universities, a huge responsibility for governments. And, you know, moving away from doing what everyone else is doing, you know, digital fashion is providing a lot of opportunities for brands in terms of marketing, but also digital fashion is being marketed as the solution for sustainability, which in my opinion is a completely wrong view. You know, it might help, but it's just a small thing. It's about management, it's about leadership. And think about it that way. If businesses want to change things to become more sustainable, the business model is key, the value chain is key, but also their leadership and management skills. So the message for you is that if you are in that situation, think about you as a person. Don't think about your business and ask yourself a question. Is it me who is able to transform this organization to become more sustainable? Do I really understand how to do it? Take something like digital transformation, which basically makes everything becomes driven by technology. It makes the supply chain becomes digital supply chain. Digital transformation is not about digital only. It's about digital leadership management. When I did a course in digital transformation in Imperial College, we had only a tiny focus on technology, because basically it's about what's the point of bringing technology to become more sustainable if the mindset is not technology driven, if the culture is not technology driven. So it's about the leadership first and then the management and then you do the change. So If you want to transform your organization to become more sustainable, start leadership management first. Get that ticked, and then move to the change.
And never forget that here we are talking about people. We are talking about living beings.
Yeah.
And we are talking about the earth. And we are talking about the future of our permanence in this planet. This planet is going to be able to recover without us. It's about us to think if we are going to keep living here in this wonderful planet. So it's what we have to think about it and think about others, about collaboration and about working together. Abdullah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was amazing to meet you and to hear you. Thank you.
Abdullah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope in the future we can work together for some skills that we need in our supply chain, because I think Colombia needs more thinkers like you, not only in the designer, maybe in the business and the business operation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure coming here, and I think I had a lot of good insights which will send me back to London with a lot of thoughts, and hopefully I will try to understand more about the fashion industry here and try to bring this back with every cooperation or knowledge you would want me to help with. I'm available, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
No olvidemos que tenemos programación en las plazas para las Fashion Films y regresamos para Fashion Films a las 3 de la tarde. Ahora en este momento vamos a empezar a transmitir Fashion Films en las plazas y a las 3 de la tarde nuevamente la segunda sesión de Fashion Films. A las 4 venimos al conversatorio de Foro Naranja de Creaturismo.